How should I address you? Cavaliere or knight or?
Maestro or Riccardo is perfect. Nothing else.
You received so many different orders. So you were ordered by Republic of Italy with the Cavaliere di Gran Croce. You were knighted by the Queen Beatrix of Netherlands. You also received the order of the title of l'officier of the Order des Arts et des Lettres. So what does it mean to you?
Very nice honors, but I think basically I am just a sort of, soldier of music. Music is my life, and therefore I have this goal in front of me to try to achieve as much as I can my interpretative projects.
You were born in a musical family, so let's say this was sort of natural for you to become an artist, a musician. Your father was a conductor, also composer. Your sister is a harpist, and she's also a composer. So, did you have any chance at all to become something else?
No, I was very attracted since I was very young to the sound of the orchestra. So this was for me the prime wish to become a musician, but a musician in direction to be a conductor. I studied piano in Rome, and my teacher at the time thought that I had very special gift to become a pianist. And this was never for 1 minute any doubt in my mind that this will not become my future. The fascination was, since I was young, about the complexity and somehow the diversity of the sound of an orchestra, and this was for me the main point to make studies and then also study composition to be able to one day interpret somebody else's compositions.
Very early you became a conductor assistant of Claudio Abbado at the age of 20, and after a few years you already made a debut at La Scala, and since then your destiny was very much connected to the very big orchestras. So you collaborated with the Berlin Radio Symphony Orchestra, with the London Philharmonic Orchestra, Teatro Comunale di Bologna, Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra from Amsterdam.
Yes.
And not least, but and the last, with the Gewandhaus Orchestra Leipzig. So actually you collaborated with so many different orchestras with different cultural backgrounds and history. So how does it feel? How this affected you?
Is a joy and a privilege to work with such a long-lasting tradition orchestra, like the Amsterdam is Leipzig now. And for me, the interesting challenge is to try to renew the repertoire in terms of new music, in terms of contemporary music, and in terms of new ideas of interpretation of the classics. That's the most difficult, and this is the most challenging somehow, to be head of such a long tradition orchestra. They are very sensitive musicians, the colleagues from Leipzig, which want to also be challenged into new routes. For instance, playing Beethoven or Brahms or Bruckner into something which can be hopefully something different. Not certainly with the stereotype of just doing performing and let's say interpreting those composers in the so-called usual way. This is great for the past, but the future should move on and develop in a different direction, I think.
In what kind of, can you be a little bit more specific?
Well, sometimes if you compare the Beethoven Symphony we recorded compared to the let's say the historical great cycles of Maestro Mazur, you can hear the difference not only of the kind of coloring of the interpretation and the direction of the way the music goes, but also for the tempi, for instance. We have been recording, we have some of the few orchestras with modern instruments which has approached Beethoven in the original metronomes, which is incredibly difficult because of the high speed and require an incredible virtuosity from the orchestra, but at the same time a deep Beethoven culture. And this is what the Gewandhaus had both things to put together for such a project.
The Gewandhaus Orchestra has a very long tradition tracing back to 1743, and you just mentioned that nevertheless this great tradition, they are very open-minded. What did you mean by this?
Yeah, because there had never been a feeling of crystallization of the interpretation. Something which has been very successful in the past, so should continue like this. I think this kind of crystallization of ideas, of ideali interpretativi also, can be very limitative for an orchestra, how to develop for the forward. And I think it's important that the longest the life and history of an orchestra is, like the Gewandhaus, which now is at 233 years old, the fresher is the approach to the new. And the open-mindedness, I think, is a very important point, actually.
You were introduced to the orchestra by the Maestro Herbert von Karajan. So in the 1986, you conducted the orchestra for the first time.
Right.
And from the 2005, if I don't mistake, you are like a regular chief orchestra Kapellmeister. So
Right.
how does it feel? You are an Italian, but living in Germany, dealing with the German tradition. You are very also keen on Mahler tradition.
Well, this was for me a great challenge, and somehow also to re-establish Mahler's tradition in the city, which invited Mahler for 2 years to be second Kapellmeister, together with Maestro Arthur Nikisch. Somehow Mahler started the conducting career in terms of, let's say, the major project like the Ring der Nibelungen in Leipzig, even though it was prepared from early years like Ljubljana. He was in Ljubljana when he was 21, and there he experienced the complexity of conducting opera, for instance. I have a feeling that Mahler will become more and more a sort of regular present, not only with me, but in the future also, for his music in Leipzig. Leipzig was always oriented to Bruckner, given also the strong relationship of Maestro Nikisch with Anton Bruckner. But I have a feeling that things now are moving into more let's say, established balance between Bruckner and Mahler. We are proud, of course, to come to Ljubljana with the 9th Symphony of Mahler.
You made different projects regarding the Mahler, like the festival in 1995 in Amsterdam, and you also organized the Mahler Festival like 2 years ago.
Yes.
in Leipzig, and you also recorded, I think, the whole cycles of symphonies.
Yeah,
Mahler
the
symphonies.
recordings are done with the Concertgebouw Orchestra. We are starting a new project, video with Accentus, and we are already halfway. We just finished recording the 5th Symphony 1 week ago, which we will play tonight in Vienna again. And so we will move on with the video project of the Mahler Symphony up to 2016 with the recording of the 10th Symphony complete by Derek Cook. This will be the end of this huge, long ride and project.
So in Ljubljana you are coming with two great symphonies of the two great composers, so the 9th Symphony of Mahler and Beethoven.
Yeah.
So what can we expect from those two great nights?
Well, the 9th of Beethoven was established by Maestro Nikisch at the turn of the previous century, that this will be the piece to celebrate the change to the new year. This became now world famous, and many countries now do that as well. But don't forget that this was initiated by Nikisch in Leipzig. And so to come to Ljubljana with the 9th Beethoven, which we do every year, 29th, 30th, 31st of December, a tradition that in Leipzig did never stop, even under the war years, is a very deep meaning. And we are proud of that, because it not only is the masterpiece which everybody loves, but it will bring part of our tradition really to Ljubljana. It's a very radical piece linked to the Gewandhaus Orchestra. The 9th of Mahler is the proseguimento, is the development of a long project which we have started in 2005 with the Seventh Symphony at the time, which will move on, and therefore this is in the sort of in the line to continue the completion of the entire cycle of the Mahler symphonies.
In Ljubljana, we are also very proud of the fact that Mahler spent some time in Ljubljana, and
Sure.
I don't know if you know, like 2 years ago, celebrating the Mahler's anniversary, within the Ljubljana festival, there was a great concert dedicated to the 8th Mahler Symphony, conducted by
fantastic.
Valery Gergiev, and there were more than 1,000 artists on the stage.
My God,
Yeah.
that was really
It was-
done in the Symphony
yeah.
of the Thousand.
Yeah.
I have done the 8 many times, but always around 400. 400, 450. I think is enough to have this sort of feeling of this gigantic work. But certainly, if it is around 1,000, it is a complete, let's say, kaleidoscopic project in a very large environment. You should have a proper hall. Where did they play?
Just outside.
Well,
Open
open air,
the
open air.
square,
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
Just renovated square. So it
It's
was
a
really great.
magnificent
Yeah.
piece which can take also the open air. The only thing is that beginning of second part is a very intimate music. It's like chamber music suddenly. So you have a long interlude before the second movement develop, which is very light. So that could be the only tricky moment for open air performances.
Yeah, but we didn't have many problems. So we are also proud of the fact that in the 1977, the Gewandhaus Leipzig Orchestra already came to Ljubljana.
Really?
And they played at the Ljubljana Festival back that time.
That's nice. So we are catching back to the
Yes.
tradition
Yeah.
somehow. I'm very
Let's say
pleased
so.
about that. Yeah.
Just one thing, we are also very proud that Maestro Bach came to Ljubljana last year, and he's coming back to the Ljubljana Festival as well. And I read that you recorded with him
The Bach
Bach's,
concertos,
yeah,
yes.
5 concertos.
He's a very interesting artist and a man who has chosen all his life to be devoted to Bach. He's very extraordinary, and he plays in an extraordinary way Bach. We will continue recording in June next the concerto for 2 and 3 pianos with him, with Ms. Argamanian and Mr. Ashkar.
So I don't want to remind you, but this year you will complete 60 years.
Unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately. So Maestro, what are your wishes for the future?
Well, first of all, health, because I had some surprise 2 years ago of my health with heart, which was a bit, alarming. Fortunately solved now. But apart of that, to continue to make the profession of conductor with the pleasure and the joy and the energy, which is so important, which I have and feel every day. And that's a very first important point. The second one, to have a relationship with orchestras which can fulfill my wishes as interpreter. And this is not always guaranteed, so you have to work with the orchestra where you really identify yourself. And this is always something I've been doing very carefully, because I do, as you know, very rarely guest conductor, just because of that, yeah.
So any other orchestras that you would love to collaborate with?
There are very few, years ago there was the London Symphony Orchestra and the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. But now I am just concentrating more into the European scene with the Berliner Philharmonica, the Bayerische Rundfunk, and also La Scala Orchestra in Milan. And sometimes also I do guest appearances with the Vienna Philharmonic. Basically, those are the orchestras where I do work as a guest conductor.
Maestro, thank you so much. We are really looking forward to see you in Ljubljana.
Me too, very much. And keeping in mind what tradition Ljubljana have, and I think what an interesting public you have as well.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward.